This is the Ready to Love, and this is going to be the exit interview for Tony that Tony did on Ages and Stages with Rashid. And y'all, I really love the interview. I think Rashid did an excellent job. I think he asked a lot of the questions that we all wanted to hear the answers to. And I did enjoy it. I walked away feeling as if I learned a little bit more about Tony. Has my opinion changed? No. My opinion has not changed one bit about Tony. But I will say this before I get all the way to the interview. I will say this. Tony helped me along because Tony told us this reunion is coming in hot, y'all. It is coming in hot. And at first I had been hearing this, that the reunion was going to be so great. But I kept saying, well, how's the reunion going to be great when they haven't even seen the episodes before the reunion was taped? We find out that the reunion was taped around December the 19th, around that time. And we didn't even start seeing the episodes to January. So when the reunion was taped, there were no episodes. But Tony made it real clear. He laid it out for me because I was missing a few pieces of the puzzle. And he said, no, what they did was they had all the footage. So what they did at the reunion was they rolled the tape. So they got to see all these scenes. And then what happened was we're going to get their raw, unedited reaction. Oh, I'm ready for it, people. In fact, as I start to think about it, it's actually going to be an even better reunion because when they actually see the episode at home in the comfort of their own home, and they have a chance to actually get all of whatever their raw reactions out at home. And then when the reunion comes, they're able to come and have a prepared speech. But now we find out that not this time. They are seeing the footage live on camera. And as Tony says, they roll the tape and then the camera is right on them, waiting for their reaction. So I am ready for this reunion. I can't wait. I was thinking it was going to be a not so good reunion, but now I'm flipping all the way over and saying this might be one of the best reunions because now we see it's going to be their raw, unedited emotions. So I'm here for it. I am here for it. So be sure to come back and watch my Ready to Love recap review on that Saturday because I'll be watching it that Friday night with my popcorn. I'll be there with my popcorn. So let's move on and start talking about this Ready to Love interview with Tony. I'll say this to Tony. Tony is saying how he learned a lot about himself. He's saying a lot about, he watched a lot of the footage. A lot of it was cringeworthy. He apologized to Morgan. He apologized to Natasha. He did a lot of apologizing. He said he did a lot of, that's not me. That's not me. That's not who I am. Everybody knows who, that's not me. And I'm going to say this about Tony. Tony might have done a lot of learning, but I don't think he's learned the biggest lesson of all. So learning is a process. There's several steps in learning. There's oftentimes a lot of lessons that need to be learned. And when it comes to Tony and Morgan, they actually are pretty complicated in the fact that there's a lot of learning they both need to do. I don't think it's all Morgan and I don't think it's all Tony. I think it's Tony came into this situation with pre-existing issues. Morgan came into this relationship process with pre-existing issues. I think there are two pre-existing issues combined and made a new issue. So if you're really going to grow, you actually have to talk about all three issues. You've got to talk about Tony recognizing there's some things about him outside of this process that needs changing. Then he has to recognize that there's some things about Morgan outside of this process that needs changing. And then he's got to also recognize that the two of them, without those changes and improvements, don't make a good couple. And when I say Tony hasn't learned the biggest lessons of all, I don't think he got those 3 points. It's like, like a triangle. 3 points to the triangle. And what I feel that Tony did in this interview was he didn't recognize all 3 points of the triangle. So I'm going to start with the point where he didn't recognize some things about himself. One of the things that Tony kept talking about was, that's not my character. That's not who I am. People who see me would know that's not me. I don't really like when people say this Because if we saw you do it, then it's a part of you. Does it mean it's all of you? No, because we're all made up of a variety of different parts of us. We're not all just one thing. We're not just one thing. We are little bits and pieces of lots of things, our experiences, our lives, lots of little bit. What Tony was doing was he kept talking about how he was embarrassed to see himself behave a certain way. It was cringeworthy. He doesn't want to be that person to his kids, lots of things. But what he was trying to also downplay was that he himself isn't an assertive or aggressive, whatever the word you want to call it, confrontational, argumentative. I don't care what adjective you put to it. For me, he didn't acknowledge enough that that is a part of him. And the reason why I say that's a problem for me is because if you can't acknowledge it, that it's a part of you, whether it's 5% of you or 10% of you or 15% of you or 80% of you, if you can't even acknowledge that's a part of you, how can I trust that you will fix it? It's the same thing I said about Morgan. Morgan wrote in her Instagram apology to Natasha that I don't even recognize that woman on the screen. And I'm saying, well, how can't you recognize her? Because I've been watching her every single week and I recognize her. I've seen it. I see your pattern of being vindictive and having an affinity and a need for vengeance. How can't you see it? And what people tend to do, and which is what Morgan's doing and Tony is doing, they're saying, you see this small bit of piece of me, but that's not who I am. That's fine if you don't say you're that person all the time or you're that person 100% of the time. But we're not going to make no progress if you keep denying that it's a part of you. Because if you keep and stay in the denial stage, how are you going to get to the point where you're going to start addressing it and doing something? So he did tell us he's in therapy. He's been in therapy for 4 months now. Fantastic. So at some point in time, I'm sure his therapist will help him get to this part where he can't keep denying that this is a part of him, because it is a part of him. And if he keeps denying it, he won't do the steps he needs to do to address it and take care of it. So he's in therapy. So hopefully the therapist he has will eventually help him get past this part where he can keep doing things and saying, that was an anomaly. That was out of character. That's not who I am. Because then they can just keep brushing it off and saying, I was only that way in this instance, but it's not really who I am. So I really don't have to do anything different. There's nothing I really need to fix because that's really not who I am. I don't like that. I don't like that. You can't trust that a person's going to change when they don't even acknowledge that it's more than one instance. Because Tony lost his cool on more than one instance. Even Rashid said, why did you let Lyndon get up under your skin like that? If you are this calm, cool, collected person like you say you are, Tony, why did you let Lyndon get up underneath your skin like that? And he said, because Lyndon wouldn't back down. Well, there you go. That means that if you ever encounter another man who won't back down, or another situation where you won't back down, you won't do anything differently, because you're blaming and saying that the reason why you didn't behave differently was because of what he was doing. Once you're always putting all the work on someone else to be different or do different, you never have to do nothing. I acted a fool. I lashed out at Lyndon. Sure, I apologized to him. But if it wasn't for him being so relentless, chasing Morgan and not backing down, I wouldn't have been that guy. I would have been the calm, collected guy that I normally am. So that means you're only calm and collected unless somebody triggers you. Okay, which gets to the next point of why they shouldn't be together, because the Morgans of the world are triggers for the Tonys of the world. Tony only stays calm when he's not around a person like a Morgan that might trigger him. So him still running around talking about, oh, we had a great connection and he still talks to Morgan. Yeah, they're not together now. They don't have a romantic relationship. But the way Tony was talking, he never came to any full understanding that, you know what, me and Morgan really just shouldn't be together, period. I got things to work on. She got things to work on. And honestly, our personalities are not good for each other. That's the truth. He never got to that point. He was even making up excuses for Morgan, saying, I could understand the way she reacted, the way she did to stuff. Why? Why can't you understand that? Why can't you still say Morgan is a nice lady? I care for her or whatever, but some of her behaviors are wrong and she needs to get that fixed. Even when Rashid was asking him, man, why did you run from Morgan when you found out that she put nair in the hair of a guy? You know what Tony said? Because I knew she wouldn't do that to me. What? That's not the point. The point isn't whether she would do it to you. The point was that she did it. Why are you only worried about how she treats you and not how she treats others? This is what I say about even when people are dating. Be very careful about only judging a person by the way they treat you. If they treat you nice, but they are assholes and mean to everybody else, just wait your turn. You are not special. You are not exempt. It's just not your number yet. It's just not your turn. So Tony to sit up here and say, well, I wasn't afraid about the nair in the hair because I knew Morgan wouldn't do that to me because I'm not that guy and she wouldn't do it to me. Well, you was wrong. She didn't do the nair in the hair, but she exacted her revenge, her vindictiveness, her vengeance on you on national TV, and she got you good. And even you have admitted on the interview that you were stunned. So once again, you underestimated the depth, the degree at which Morgan needs help. You said, oh, she wouldn't put no nair in the hair on me because of who I am. No, you're not looking at who Morgan is, not your relationship with Morgan, who you think she is. Look at how she treats other men when they turn their attention away from her onto other women. She gets back. She snapped back on Anthony the same kind of way. When Anthony wasn't paying her enough attention and looking another way, she snapped back and she hemmed up Anthony as well. Come to find out, Tony said some of his best friends that he got out of this show are Anthony and Mark Anthony. Two of his best buddies on the show are Anthony and Mark Anthony. That's what he said. We know that Mark Anthony is from New York as well, so maybe they share some common characteristics. I wouldn't be surprised if Mark Anthony is a younger version of Tony in some ways, because I've seen some signs from Mark Anthony with his stubbornness and the way that he kind of has conversations, and even what he was doing on this show trying to do to Mercedes and running Mercedes and Jeffrey. I wouldn't be surprised if Mark Anthony is a younger version of Tony. So I could see how Mark Anthony could be running around behind Tony. And then maybe Tony likes the fact that Anthony is so calm nature. Maybe he feels he could learn something from Anthony. Probably so. Probably could learn a lot. And then he said he also is good friends with Cynthia as well. That, you know, Cynthia is a cool friend that he likes as well. So I'm glad that Tony has come out with some good friends out of this whole season. And hopefully he will continue on his learning journey to learn more. Because right now, like I said, he hasn't learned the three most important things. He hasn't really admitted that he does have some aggression issues that he needs to confront. Not that he was just a bad person in this instant, but that he has some things that he needs to address, period. He hasn't confronted that Morgan by herself needs some help. And he hasn't admitted that the two of them together should not be together. Their two personalities absolutely shouldn't be together, because Morgan will trigger his aggressiveness and assertiveness, and he also triggers Morgan because Morgan likes revenge. Like I've told everyone, she's addicted to revenge. She's addicted to vengeance. And people who like to set up scenarios like that, one of the things to get to the vengeance, you need to find a toxic relationship. That helps you get to the vengeance. So Morgan is so attracted to Tony because she already knew who he was. She already knew he was going to bring a level of toxicity. She already knew he was going to bring drama. And internally, she doesn't even realize it. She's drawn to that because eventually she'll get to what she really wants to get to, which is the vengeance. That's what she wants to get to. It's like a crack addict. I tell you, it's a form of addiction. It's like a crack addict who only wants to say, every time you turn around, they somehow find the other drug users. You ever meet a person who says, yeah, I'm a drug user, I'm an alcoholic, but it's just because of the people I hang around. And then next thing you know, they go, I just need to move away from this neighborhood. I need to get away from this because the only reason I'm like this is because of these people I'm hanging around. And then they move to a whole nother state, a whole nother neighborhood. And next thing you know, you talking to them and they done found the drug addicts in the new city. So you don't move to a whole nother state because you said the reason why you was doing drugs and getting high and drinking was because of the people in your neighborhood. You move to a whole nother state. But when you get to that whole other state, all the millions of people in that state or in that city, you find all the other drug addicts. And it ain't nothing wrong with you. It's all the other people. That's Morgan. Morgan wants to say the only reason why she's got to put Nair in the hair, that she's got to be seek vengeance and vindictiveness is because of people who come in her life. No, she seeks them out. She got a radar to it. She's got a magnet to it. She sees them and she's like, ooh, if I go over there, I can get high and get high off this vengeance I'm going to get. And she runs to him. She runs to him. She was running to Tony. There was nothing hardly Tony could do to get rid of her because the closer she got to him, the more it welled up inside of her where she was going to be able to have this really a vengeful moment. Morgan is an addict. And for Tony not to realize it about Morgan and not to realize it about himself, what his own anger and aggression issues are, and then not to realize the two shouldn't be together, he ain't nowhere near healed. Nowhere near it. We find out, because we was also talking about where does this come from? You know, Rashid didn't say where did it come from, but I was saying where did it come from? There were a couple of things we found out about Tony. First of all, Tony has 2 kids. We knew he had kids, but we didn't know the circumstances around it. So he's got 2 children, 2 baby mamas. He ain't too different than Jeffrey. 2 kids, 2 baby mamas. One is 17, one is I think 9. One of the kids is still up in the north in Connecticut. The other kid is down in Florida where he is. 2 baby mamas. He wasn't married to either one of the women. He was engaged. Never married them. Okay. So here's another one, having kids with women, never marrying them, engaged. The only reason he got engaged, he admitted, was because he's a preacher's kid. And come to find out, he just thought he should do the right thing and get engaged to the woman, but then never married her. So he's already had 2 kids, never married either woman, saying it never worked out. And now he's ready for the white picket fence. He wants to be able to wake up alongside his kids, have the kids come jump on the bed. You know, all the Instagram moments. He wants that now. So now he was really serious about wanting to be with Morgan. And that's why he was really shocked, because even though they had a lot of these toxic moments, he thought they could stay together and prove to everybody else, see, we can work out our issues. But the other thing we found out about Tony was that he was raised by all women. You see this a lot. I don't want to blame it all on women, but I'm going to tell you this. You hear from a lot of men, because I'm older than you guys, a lot of people who watch my channel, you hear from a lot of men who are raised by a lot of strong women that you would think that they would have learned to maybe treat women differently, but it ends up being the opposite. Because what happens is they spend so much time being dominated by women when they're children and teenagers, not having a voice, not having to be able to express themselves as young boys, young men, that when they do get out on their own, they actually come out in the world with a bit more assertiveness and aggression. That's why I've told you guys in all my other videos, be careful where the assertiveness and the aggression comes from for the men. Because although women talk around, oh, I like an assertive man and aggression man, you better be careful that assertiveness where he wants to conquer you and control you doesn't come from a deep-rooted place in his childhood where he felt dominated by women because he was raised by all women. And now he's playing that out in his adult life and he wants to dominate his mates. That's not the assertive man that you want when it comes from a place like that. Because what you become to that man is you become his prey, and you become that he's taken out everything that was done to him as a child, the way he felt. He didn't have to be abused. He didn't have to be abused. All he had to do was feel dominated, and then he comes in and embraces it with you, and he does the same thing. We saw that when we had Meet the Family, Tony brought his sister, I forget her name, But she was not a mild, meek woman, not one bit. And he said she doesn't hold her tongue, not one bit. She doesn't hold her tongue. Tony said he's a preacher's kid, but it sounds like his parents were not together because he said he was raised by all women, which means he might have been a preacher's kid, but the daddy wasn't there, which means the mama might have never remarried, which means any aunts around him, there were aunts, but there were no uncles. Okay, we know he has a sister, but I don't know if Tony had a brother too. I don't know what that looks like, but he specifically said he was raised by all women. These could be some of the answers to why Tony interacts with women the way he does, the assertiveness, the aggressiveness, because it could come from his childhood. It can come from his childhood. You've heard plenty of men talk about that. You even heard it from the late, great Kevin Samuels talked about it. He talked about when people talk about some of the things that Kevin Samuels used to talk about. Kevin Samuels often spoke about that he was raised by a lot of women, and how he felt dominated by those women. This is a very common story. And when you're dating men and you see the assertiveness of them, you better take a second look underneath the hood and find out, does that assertiveness come from a place of confidence, or does that assertiveness come from a place of being defensive and wanting to right some wrongs that they felt were done to them in their childhood? Because that changes the way you relate to that man. There's no doubt that Tony has intellectual knowledge. He talks about he has a bachelor's degree. He has a master's degree. I think he has a bachelor's in accounting, and then he went on to get a master's degree, and I'm not for sure what else was. But it looks like his mom was the pastor in the house. His dad wasn't the pastor. So I don't know where the father has been, but he clearly stated he was raised by all women, probably strong women. That sister was strong. I imagine that mom being a pastor, she had to probably be a strong woman as well to lead a church if she was leading a church. There's a lot of things that really do add up that makes me understand how Tony got here. But Tony needs to recognize that's a part of him and not keep saying, that's not who I am. That's not who I am. He didn't, at least he didn't blame it on the edits. He did say he was doing those things. But what he kept trying to get us to believe was that it's not really who he is. It was a moment out of character. And that's what I don't believe. I don't think he sees himself, just like I said, Morgan doesn't see herself, and they keep saying that these are isolated incidences, and I don't believe that. I don't believe them one bit. And even if they are only a 10% part of them, 20% part, I don't need to argue that point. The point I'm making is you can't deny it's a part of you. So let's stop denying it. Let's start talking about what you now need to do differently. Not what you would have done differently on this show, but what you need to do differently going forward in life, because this moment will come up again. There will be another woman who could trigger you, Tony. There'll be another Lyndon in the world. You can't just keep counting on the Morgans of the world never showing up in your life, or the Lyndons of the world never showing up in your life. You've got to know how to act differently. Even when the Lyndons come around or the Morgans come around, you can't keep blaming your behavior on other people and then saying, even if you're not blaming them, they keep saying, well, if that didn't happen, I wouldn't have been that person because normally I'm a nice person. I never said you was mean. I never said that you was a mean, evil person. I said that you are overly aggressive, assertive in a lot of situations, period. That's the other thing. People need to agree on definitions. That oftentimes gets in the way of the discussion, because I may say you are aggressive or you're assertive, and someone else may say, well, no, I'm not. So then you're arguing back and forth over what aggressive or assertive is, and you're actually not getting to the real problem. I don't do that anymore. If I use a label and I say, oh, I think you are a really aggressive, Tony. If I'm talking to Tony and Tony says, well, I wasn't really aggressive. It's easy to say, well, Tony, you were aggressive. You did this, this, and this. Then he'll just keep saying, no, I wasn't aggressive. I'm like, well, you were aggressive. You did this. Now what I do, because I don't like that back and forth anymore. Now what I do is I say, well, let's not put a word label on it because we may not have the definition of the word. Let's just start talking about, I didn't like the behavior that you exhibited. What do you want to call it? You don't want to call it aggressive. What do you want to call it? Impatient, irritated, annoyed? Give it whatever name you want to give it, because I don't want to get stuck on the definition of the word. What I want to get to is, I don't care what the feeling was: aggression, annoyance, irritation, impatience, whatever it was. I don't like the behavior that came with that feeling. Let's get past this disagreeing about the word assertive or aggressive. Let's get past it. Let's get to what I'm really upset about is not the word definition. What I'm upset about is the behavior. So call it whatever you want. What I want to know is, how are you going to stop that behavior? Give it whatever name you want to give it. You could give it the name red. Give it whatever the name is. Tell me, before I feel comfortable, I want you to tell me how you're going to stop that behavior. And if you then say, well, I don't think there's any behavior I need to stop, then there you go. And that's where I say with Morgan, he doesn't describe any behavior that Morgan needs to stop. He doesn't see a problem with anything too much that she did. Not at all. He says she's strong. Maybe, I think he did say he didn't think that she should say the part about Natasha spilling all her beans, because what he said was he was confiding in Morgan, and then Morgan spills the beans on national TV. But I don't even really believe that whole story. I believe Tony told Morgan because he knew it eventually would get back to Morgan. He said he didn't tell all his buddies. He didn't tell Anthony. He didn't tell he didn't tell Mark Anthony, because even Rashid asked him, well, did you tell your buddies? Is that how, you felt maybe it would get out and you was trying to get ahead of it? He said, no, I didn't tell anyone. I only told Morgan. I don't know if that's true. And I don't know if Natasha didn't tell anybody, because Natasha was talking to a lot of the ladies. Natasha was also trying to get information about what was going on the show from ladies. She even admitted that. She admitted that she was talking to the ladies, and the ladies were telling her he has a connection with Morgan and also whatever. So I'm quite sure that she also probably told the ladies that, hey, me and Tony been going out. I wouldn't put it past it that Natasha told the ladies. Natasha might not have said she slept with Tony, but I wouldn't put it past Natasha to tell a few ladies that even though I'm off the show, I'm still going out with Tony. And even that alone would have upset Morgan. Even alone that he had been going out with Natasha, if that got back to Morgan, it would have upset her. So I don't really believe that Tony just told Morgan out of the goodness of his heart for full transparency. He wanted to get ahead of things because he knew it was going to get back to Morgan, and he wanted to get ahead of things. He said she didn't get that angry in the moment. I don't believe that, and maybe not. But he did say Morgan is very calculating. And what he didn't realize was that Morgan was calculating his downfall, his demise, her get back, her vengeance on him. She'd been plotting it for a long time. You remember when she talked about the nair in the hair. She even admitted to that before she put that nair in the hair of that man, she thought about it, she plotted it, she Googled it. She made sure she couldn't go to jail over it. That's deliberate act. It's what Natasha said about her, that is malice and intent, that is done for a specific reason. She's calculating. She sits back and she thinks. Morgan has been salivating for this moment that she had at the end of this season, this great takedown. She has been salivating on this moment for a long time. And she, as Tony kept saying on the show, he likes to eat. Morgan ate well. She ate real well. Tony was trying to clean up the whole Natasha thing, talking about the time. Now he says he and Natasha were in a relationship. You ain't in a relationship for 3 weeks. That ain't no relationship. That's not a relationship. 3 weeks, you're not in a relationship. You might be getting to know each other, but there's no real relationship. He was trying to clean up, because I think what he was doing was trying to save the virtue of Natasha now, making people understand that it wasn't like a one-hit wonder. It wasn't just a smash and grab, that we actually were going out and getting to know each other and all this other kind of stuff. That's fine. He wants to clean up like that. But then he says, and it was before me and Morgan really got serious. Well, I don't believe that, because you even talk about how you and Morgan had a strong connection from day one. Every deliberation room, you talked about the strong connection you had with Morgan. So to say that the time I was messing around with Natasha was before I had a strong connection with Morgan. It's not true. We watched the series. You were in an entanglement with Natasha for 4 weeks, like you said. But we saw on day one in every deliberation room, you were talking about the strong connection you and Morgan had. Both can't be right. No, you had a strong connection with Morgan. You were still going over here doing behind closed door with Natasha, and you were still chasing Marcia as well. And here you are mad at Morgan because she's entertaining Lyndon, and Lyndon won't go away. But here you are entertaining 3 women, 2 on the show and 1 off the show. But you real hot and mad at Lyndon? Why are you mad at Lyndon's relentlessness after Morgan, but you're not mad at your own when you over here chasing Natasha, you over here chasing Marcia, and you chasing a Morgan? It's a game. We understand we're supposed to be dating multiple people. So, but you can't be a hypocrite and say he can chase multiple people, but Lyndon can't be chasing Morgan. That don't even make no sense. That's why I tell you he's a long way away from being healed. He's a long way away. And if this is the Tony we get after 4 months of counseling, he's got a good 2 to 3 years more he needs to go. 2 to 3 more years for sure. There's a lot of things about Tony that even when his speech, I can say, wow, he needs a lot more things that he needs to do. It was one part of the conversation that really irked me. When he was talking about his kids' mothers, he would always say, she got pregnant. I was like, what do you mean she got pregnant? You act like you was nowhere around. You act like you're not the father of the baby. She got pregnant. She got pregnant by who? Are you trying to insinuate she got pregnant by somebody else? That doesn't even make any sense. Oh, no, that's what he said. He didn't say she got pregnant. He would say she ended up pregnant. That's what he say. She ended up pregnant. Like he didn't have nothing to do with it. It's little things like that tell you it signifies a lack of accountability, as if you weren't involved in the process. She ended up pregnant. Well, if you have sex without contraception, we don't know about the birds and the bees. We don't know how babies are made. Don't nobody end up pregnant. If you are having sex unprotected, then you don't end up pregnant. And this idea that, I don't know, it's weird. It's just more in line with what I say is Tony still really isn't at the place of full accountability. At least not for me. At least not for me. He's healing. Yes, I give him that. But is he anywhere near full accountability? No. Because when he sees situations, he brushes a lot of stuff under the rug. He makes it sort of like it's cavalier, that it's nothing really that serious. Like, oh, that's not a big deal. When he's talking about, Morgan with the nair in the hair, that's not no big deal. I wasn't scared of that. I wasn't scared of Morgan because she did that. That's not the point of you being scared. The point of it is when a woman does that, that doesn't signify to you that there might be some underlying issues. No, it's almost like go a level deeper, Tony. Go a level deeper in your thinking because you're too much here on the surface. You need to go a level deeper. And it's not until you go that level deeper and get to more of the root causes that you're able to solve your problems. If you stay up here on the surface level, you ain't gonna never solve nothing because you just keep thinking it's an anomaly. It's just a one-time thing. You're not seeing the patterns. You're not seeing the systemic issues that are causing these problems. And so you never fix the problems. I need Tony to take that bachelor's and that master's degree, and I need to make him go deeper so he can solve some of these real problems. Even when he was explaining away some of the things he said when he was angry, when he busted in the room on Morgan when she was crying, and he'll say, well, I was just upset. And sometimes you say things when you're upset. Yes, sometimes it happens, but it happened a lot with you, Tony. Once again, he acts like it was just one time. No, it wasn't one time. It was a lot of times. When it happens more than 3 times, that's a problem. It happens once, yes, anomaly. Happened twice, okay. 3 times, no. We got a bigger problem. We got a bigger problem when things are happening 3 times. And if you keep blowing it off as if it's no big deal, you're never going to solve the real problem. You're never going to solve it. I mean, he talked about saying, Morgan's a strong personality and she needs a certain kind of man. He fell into that narrative what Morgan likes to spin because she's so out of control and she's got this level of crazy. She wants an assertive man and he's more than willing to step up because it's really what he likes to do. He likes to dominate. He likes to control. So when he hears a woman saying, I need a woman to control me, shoot, Tony is ready for the job. He's ready for the job because that's the role he actually likes to play. So when he says he isn't controlling and dominating and assertive, what are you talking about? You love that role. You love being a dominating and controlling over women. So when Morgan presents and says, I need a man to dominate and control me, dang, you two are speaking each other's language. She loves a toxic man so she can exact vengeance, and you love a woman who's so wild and crazy that you have to control her. And then you can sit around and say the reason why I got to be so domineering and dominating over you is because you need a man to put you in your place. All this is toxic. All this is so toxic. They're attracted to the very thing they need to learn how to get away from. Tony loves a woman that probably has a little bit of crazy in her, because then he doesn't have to control himself. He can be full on controlling and dominating because that's what that woman needs. And Morgan can go around and look for toxic men so she can get around to her crack, getting high on her crack at the end and exacting vengeance on him. Ugh. These two need to stay far away from each other. He said that after, Morgan turned him down on the last day of the finale, they didn't talk for a little bit, but eventually he was able to call her and apologize and say, you know what, I understand why you did. I understand why you chose you. They need to stop talking to each other. They need to stay far, far away from each other. I'm glad they got to a point where maybe they can be respectful and, whatever, but they don't need to be talking to each other. They are triggers for each other. They like each other's crack. They need to stay far, far away from each other. They don't need to be together one bit. They don't even need to be friends. They don't even need to be friends. Even when he was talking to Marcia, one of the reasons why he liked Marcia but kind of didn't like Marcia was because Marcia wasn't assertive enough. He told her that. I need you to bring the assertiveness. So then that way he could bring out his more controlling side. He was baiting Marcia to, girl, I need you to ratchet it up, because once you ratchet it up, I can ratchet it up. But if you're going to be down here and not really doing nothing, then how am I supposed to justify all my assertiveness and all my aggression? I need you to do it too. He don't see it. That's why I said his healing is so far off. He is still using too many words, too many phrases to act like this behavior and this stuff is a one-off. It's not a one-off. And I'm not going to get no arguments over, is it 50% of Tony? Is it 70% of Tony? I'm not going to get no arguments over that. I don't care if it's 1%, 2%, 3%. Whatever percent he wants to say it is, it needs addressing, period. And it needs to be addressed in the manner of not a situation, not another person. He needs to acknowledge that is a part of him, and he needs to learn how to kill that part of him inside of himself. He needs to learn how to put that part of him to rest in the ground forever. He says he wished they would have showed more of the sensitive side, and he feels as if maybe they edited out the sensitive side, the hugging, the caring. Oh, well, you should have showed more of it. Like Rashid told him, I don't like people when they talk about edits because they can only edit what you give them. And no one's saying that he doesn't have a sensitive side. He doesn't have a side where he hugs people and kisses people and tells people sweet things. No one's denying that that side doesn't exist in Tony. No one's denying that. So if he wants to have more of that side shown, even on camera, he should have shown it a lot more so that they would have had to show it, because it would have been dominating his character on the TV screen. They had a lot of footage on Tony, a lot of footage. So the fact that they could have edited out all his caring and sensitive moments and only left these moments that they showed, that means he gave them a lot to work it. Like I told you, this has been one of the best seasons for me, because you know what? Morgan and Jeffrey gave me a lot of content. I was able to make a lot of videos with them and sit up here and talk a lot about them. And if they had never done those things, I probably would have been having a 5-minute videos. But guess what? They gave me a whole lot to talk about. So if you don't want people to have a lot to talk about with you, if you don't want to have people to have a lot of ways to see you in different lights you don't want to be seen in, stop giving them the footage. Stop giving them the footage. I think it was a good interview with Rashid. I think he did an excellent job. I actually think Tony did a good job with the interview in terms of answering the questions. He wasn't combative. He was very cooperative. So I don't really think Tony is a bad person. I really don't think that. I want to make that perfectly clear. I do not think that Tony is a bad person, but I still think there is so much more to his healing journey that he needs to do. And I still don't think that he's at full level of accountability for where some of this comes from. And he's not at full accountability because he takes accountability in that moment, in that instant, in that situation, but he's not taking the accountability that this isn't a one-off. This isn't an anomaly. This isn't something that just happened on the show and it doesn't happen anywhere else in his life. I don't believe it. I don't believe it 100 at all. And he's going to have to acknowledge that, just like Morgan is going to have to acknowledge it in her life. And then the two of them, once they acknowledge that, they'll realize that they aren't a good couple. They shouldn't be together. They probably should just not even talk anymore. Because if they have so much sexual chemistry, it could pull them back into another type of relationship, and it really isn't good for them. The sexual energy may pull them back in, and really they shouldn't be together. They shouldn't be, not even after they healed, because even after they heal, they could be tempted to go back to those ways because they'll trigger each other. They need to move on. They need to move 100% completely on. But be sure to subscribe to my channel, because I'm going to be doing pretty soon here in my next video on love and finance. I'll probably drop that video, if not later today, tomorrow for sure. So if you subscribe now, you'll be able to get the alert. And I'm going to go over a love and finance, and we're going to use Ready to Love example on this next teaching series on love and finance. Talk to you later. Bye.